If you own XRP, XLM, HBAR, CHAINLINK, or the Trump token, then you're going to want to pay attention to this video because I'm going to be diving into the technical analysis and what's really been happening in the market, because many people have been reaching out on the channel and asking whether or not they should hold any longer or start selling, considering the entire crypto market has really been struggling to break for any new highs recently. And this has arguably been one of the hardest bull runs even I've been involved in, and I've been investing in crypto since 2016. So much so that another major player in the YouTube space, Benjamin Cohen, basically stated that sentiment absolutely sucks right now, and I could not agree more. And many people believe this is because of a wide array of factors. For example, Benjamin Cohen posts this image of the fact that Solana versus Bitcoin, and Solana is a dominant player in the entire altcoin and meme coin space, has basically struggled to range or make new all-time highs relative to Bitcoin. In other words, Bitcoin dominance is up, and we're going to be covering that as well. We have to cover Bitcoin in order to understand what's likely going to happen with the market, because Bitcoin is the majority of the market. If Bitcoin fails to do well, then the rest of the market will fail to do well. And so a rising tide raises all ships. The ocean is like Bitcoin. And if the tide is going out, then you likely want to be out of the water. But when the tide comes in, that's when altcoins and the majority of the cryptos that we're going to talk about also do well. Now, he makes a note of the fact that pump fund launches right around here. This is a weekly chart. And as you can see here, Solana has failed to break for some new highs. This probably was the case in terms of Donald Trump's election or inauguration right here. But since then, dominance has consistently declined relative to Bitcoin. And this is actually true of the entire altcoin market. He's blaming meme coins and pump fund launches. And let's be real, it's gotten so bad that even the president of Argentina, Javier Milei, launched a meme coin, promoted it on his X account, and then essentially hours later, everyone absolutely got trashed. Even insiders got trashed. The only people that made money on the token were the people that launched it. And according to Javier, he was not involved in that. But then a few days later, he retweeted another way to buy the token through a contract address. So who really knows what's going on here? All we know is that consistently we're seeing billions of dollars being wiped out of the market, and insiders and token developers basically cashing it out. And none of this money makes its rotations back into altcoins, which is why the market's been struggling so bad, and why someone like Miles Ducher even said, I feel a bit sick about the state of the industry right now. It's honestly sad. So this leads me to beg the question, should you be holding stuff like XRP, CHAINLINK, Stellar, HBAR, and the Trump token if that's where your bag is concentrated? Well, let me dive into the technicals on Bitcoin so we get a better understanding of where the whole market is at, and then it's kind of like we have a foundation. We have a foundation of knowledge to build upon to say whether or not we're actually still in a bull market or this is the very start of a bear market and we should be cashing out some profit on all of these tokens. Okay, so I think the first thing we need to understand is that it's easy to get caught up in the price action of the day. As you can see here, we consistently sold off right here at about $98,500 on Bitcoin and have been seeing some support at the $95,000 range right back down here. As consistently, whenever we touch this range, we break for a new range high of the local price action. But the problem is Bitcoin has failed to really do much of anything for quite some time, considering we have a bit of resistance right here at about $98,000, $99,000 and a bit of support at 95. And we've been stuck in this range since February 4th of this month. So it's easy to be discouraged, especially when you see a sell-off right back down to these range lows and wonder, when is everything going to change? So what I like to do is say, when in doubt, zoom out. And it's best to stay off the hourly chart, sometimes even the 4-hour chart, or even even the daily chart and zoom out to the weekly chart and take a look. And as you can see here from that perspective, Bitcoin is consistently trending to the upside. We have a series of higher highs and higher lows, very long term, for an investment that is honestly doing really well over the years. Now that said, it's still quite discouraging when since December 9th of this year, for a period of 2 months essentially, Bitcoin has failed to break for some new highs. So on a weekly time frame, you can see that that's our resistance, and on a weekly time frame, the $91,000 level seems to be our support. We're consistently ranging in this box, and I'll go ahead because I'm going to start to zoom in a little bit further, put that box right up there to the point where I touch these wicks once and twice, and then touch the majority of the points right down here. This is something that people would call a Darvis box from Nicholas Darvis, who was considered a very good trader, and he had a book called How I Made $2 Million in the Stock Market, easily one of my favorites. So on a weekly time frame, if we break above and hold the $104,000 level, or on a daily time frame we break above the $108,000 level, things are going to be looking pretty good for Bitcoin. But as things stand, things have tightened up quite heavily, and when I pull up something like, let's say, a Bollinger Band, you go to indicators, look up Bollinger, you can see that we are tightening in this range. So whenever you get a squeeze in the bands that looks like this, typically there's an explosion or an expansion. Okay, right now things are getting slightly tighter in this price range, especially if I go down to like a 4-hour time frame. You can see how tight things are actually becoming in this range. And again, whenever we get a contraction, then typically what follows after is an expansion. And that expansion would look something like this, where you actually hug the band for something that I like to call a deviation magnet. Okay, the upper portion of this band acts like a magnet, where a lot of people might want to actually sell into price action like this, especially if the RSI proves that it's overbought. Typically, I want to be buying into moves like that. But as things stand in a box or a range like this, we're somewhere in the middle. So if we touch right back down to that $92,000 to $91,000 range, I would like to buy, and that's only because I've zoomed out. I can see that we're consistently trending to the upside. So let me go ahead and get rid of that Bollinger Band just so you can see. Okay, in similar fashion, when we were trending like this, even though this has been a very long period of time, and we saw a decent amount of support somewhere down here, if I could get a freaking line, at the $56,000 level, when we finally broke back above the range high right here, we actually pumped pretty hard from $72,000 all the way up to $108,000 to $109,000. So Bitcoin still looks to be in a major uptrend, even though it's been struggling to break out for a period of a few days and actually a few weeks now. And so even from a daily time frame on the Bitcoin market dominance, you can see that since the range lows back here in November of 2022, okay, that Bitcoin has consistently been trending to the upside in terms of its market dominance. In other words, Bitcoin is currently 60.7% of all of the money in the markets. And if I come right back to coin market cap right here, you can see that that means that Bitcoin is 60% of $3.19 trillion, or better yet, the total market cap or all of the money in Bitcoin is $1.9 billion. Then you have number two at $330 billion. By the way, I meant to say trillion here. And then finally on XRP, you have $153 billion. So this is about half the market cap of this. And Bitcoin far outperforms or exceeds the market cap of its second closest competitor. So Bitcoin typically needs to do well. And so sometimes it pays to pay attention to the market dominance. Whenever Bitcoin market dominance rises quite heavily, like it did back here, eventually it peaks or tops off. All of that money then that is made in Bitcoin starts to flow into the altcoin market and does something like this, where the Bitcoin dominance will decline. But as things stand, it would be better to invest in something like Bitcoin than it would the majority of meme coins. And I can prove that right now, considering that the year-to-date market narrative performance on meme coins is sitting at negative 43%. And then Bitcoin is sitting in at number 2 at a 3% return for the current year since January 1st. And already we're halfway through February. So yes, this just truly been a very boring and terrible market. Right here you have derivatives, which I'm not too sure what derivatives they're referring to, but Bitcoin would have been a far safer and a better investment to start the year off. So the real question is, when will all of these other things perform? Well, typically when you see Bitcoin start to top off here and Bitcoin dominance start to decline like it did back here, but fully make another move to the downside, and that usually comes in shortly thereafter Bitcoin tops off and peaks for the bull market. So the real question is, when will Bitcoin do that? Well, I would like to watch Bitcoin, and I would like for it to hold, at least on a daily time frame, this $91,000 level. I would also like Bitcoin to break above the $108,000 level. So honestly, if we're just talking simple risk and reward right here, let's just say you're trading this range, even back up to the upside of this range, you stand to do a 12.6% return from today's prices. And let's say you had a stop loss right below this major low right here, a range low of 91,000, right? This would be a 2.17 to 1 risk to reward. In other words, you stand to make 2.17 times what you risk. If you invest $100,000, you stand to make $217,000 on a move to the upside, back up to that $108,000 level. Still, I would like to buy the low of the range because I believe we're still in a massive bull market and a bull trend. However, it doesn't mean that we can't experience some sort of a major volatility event or a black swan event where the market could truly break right back down to 72,000 and prolong this bull market all the way through into the end of 2025, which is also very much possible. So I think it's important to pay attention to Bitcoin, because if Bitcoin comes back to the $91,000 level and breaks below it, things will not be looking good for the rest of the altcoin market and the investments that we just talked about. Now, let me give you the good news. Right now, we do have some cryptos that are outperforming Bitcoin, which we're going to show you here shortly. But essentially, to simplify everything I just stated, we need Bitcoin to hold the $91,000 to $92,000 level. We would like to see it break back up to the $108,000 level. And if that happens, then the entire market is looking healthy. If we break below, however, yes, it might be time to start thinking about taking profits on all of the altcoins I just mentioned, because even with good technology in a very poor market environment that we consider a bear market, everything declines against. It's kind of like a rising tide raises all ships. Well, on the flip side, if the tide is going out, there's nothing any good technology can do to fight it. And that's why we've seen the entire market struggle relative to Bitcoin. This is why we've seen Bitcoin dominance go up. There are stronger hands and more money in it. But let's get into it now. So look, we're going to look at XRP first and foremost. And what I love about XRP is it's truly looking pretty dang good, considering from a weekly time frame, the previous all-time high on virtually all exchanges except for a few on outside of South Korea, but especially on a weekly time frame, was about $2.60. And since that point in time, you can see that we broke above the range, supported right down here. So let me go ahead and take a trend line now and place it like that. And then we saw a bullish engulfing weekly candle with a very long wick on the weekly. So now we're back above this range right here at $2.60. Let me put another line right there. And this would be our major support range right here, which we look to be supported at right now. If I zoom out to a daily time frame, you can see how it looks on a daily time frame. Now, if I take that 10 and 20 EMA tool, you can see that we're back above the 10 and 20 EMA. We would like to see the 10 EMA or the blue line cross above the orange line, but a support here looks good. We just need it to trend a little bit further and stronger to the upside above that $2.83 range right here for a breakout. So what I would say is we got to break above this range right here, and it should look like something like this on some volume in order to confirm the move so we make some new all-time highs soon. The good news is XRP does have a boatload of support right here at the $2.40 range, and that's indicative in the VRVP. As you can see, this is a visual range volume profile, which is basically telling us the majority of interest and money has been invested right down here at the $2.40 range. So I think because we saw so much support here, we're just seeing a small bounce, and then we'll see a move to the upside yet again. And I also think that's the case because when you go ahead, and I'll go and look at this volume in a second, you can see that from a perspective of relative strength versus Bitcoin, XRP has actually been more relatively strong over the last 90 periods since November 15th of this year. In other words, you would have been better off investing in XRP rally from November than you would have in Bitcoin. And that's saying something considering the entire market is dominated by Bitcoin right now to the tune of 60%. So as you can see here, volume has consistently declined since the high right here with one major day of buying. But generally speaking, a decline in volume like this should be healthy, and we'll continue to see volume decline back up into the previous all-time high of like $3.30 to $3.40. Generally speaking, XRP looks to be outperforming the rest of the market right now. It looks really good. It looks really healthy. I'm really liking this price action right now, and I would argue it's probably the best investment of the ones that I'm talking about, at least from a price action perspective. Now let's take a look at XLM. Now look at the stark difference. One, we have price action consistently declining and not really above that 20 EMA. It's actually being resisted from a daily time frame. So if I were to take a trend line like this, draw it from the top down through here, you can see that we failed to put in a new range high. If I were to take, for example, let's say XRP and pull XRP up, let me go ahead and remove that VRVP. You can see that XRP's price action is very similar to XLM, except for at one point in time here, XRP went for a new all-time high right here in January, like 17th, whereas XLM failed to break for a new range high and actually put in a new lower high right at the same period of time. So let me go ahead and remove those EMAs and just keep the price action up. And as you can see here, the comparison is stark. XRP seems to be more relatively strong. Also, we saw a dump from this range high that was pretty tremendous on something like Stellar, whereas on XRP you can see it's actually trading well above for a 360% gain in that same period of time, whereas XLM is only up 260%. We're talking a major difference, and right now XRP is up 423% in the same period of time versus XLM's 265. So we're talking about 170% difference in terms of performance relative. And looking back all the way, let's just go to that weekly time frame, you can see that XLM has failed. Let me go ahead and remove XRP for just a minute. Failed to put in a new all-time high in the same period of time, November, relative to its previous all-time high in 2021. Whereas when you look at the comparison of XRP put in a new all-time high, and this was actually its technical all-time high. Again, not going to argue the Korea exchanges. That's a totally different talk. But generally speaking, the aggregate all-time high was about $3.30 to $3.35 on XRP, and it recently hit $3.40. So yes, it was an all-time high. And so XRP is consistently outperforming because this is indicative of demand. So I'm not saying XLM isn't a good investment. It simply comes down to the fact that it's actually a weaker performer relative to XRP. Either way, for anyone that's holding XLM and expects it to perform, personally, I'd be far more weighted in something like XRP considering its performance. I still believe though that this is a pretty good and strong support right here from about 33 cents down to 30 cents. And so anything in this range could look like a buy, especially if you break above this descending wedge or triangle right here on a daily time frame. So yes, your risk to reward is actually pretty good considering you're all the way back down here, but this is indicative of less relative strength. If I were looking at it compared to, let's say, Bitcoin, and again, this right here would be Bitcoin, you can see that it's really trending strong to the downside relatively versus something like XRP. If I look at XRP looks a lot better. It's less close to this purple line, which would be equivalent to Bitcoin's performance. And then XLM is far closer to it, which tells you something. It's telling you a story that there's less strength and less money behind XLM. And that's fair considering XLM has a $10.16 billion market cap, whereas XRP is sitting on $152 billion. So this alone should tell you that investors or insiders who have money know something about XRP, and believe me, they have access to information and you and I don't. So unless you're one of those insiders, at the end of the day, XLM looks like a weaker or a poorer investment. Now, one could argue because it's such a small market cap and it will be equal to XRP, well, it's already had so many years to do that. And the fact that it's still consistently underperformed tells me that insiders already know XRP looks like the better investment. But again, this is just my opinion. opinion. You can make your own decisions. You can click off this video and say, I don't like it because I'm invested in XLM. But you have to remember, think about it this way. A lot of people look for confirmation bias in their investments, especially if they already hold a bag. If you hold a bag, let's say an XLM, for example, and you want it to do well, you might go seek out information that confirms your beliefs. But at the end of the day, the data is the data is the data. The market's the market's the market. I just proved to you, okay, and there's no way around it, that XLM is the weaker of the two investments, even though it's a smaller market cap. So yes, you could 15x your money in Stellar if it hits the market cap of XRP, but it's also probably not likely going to happen, considering a lot more money might flow into XRP, considering its relative strength and performance. Now let's blow through the rest of these cryptos. So I apologize if you have or hold any of the other cryptos, but we're going to talk about them right now. Now let's take a look at HBAR. We're going to zoom out to that weekly time frame. HBAR went on an absolute tear from all the way down at 5.5 cents up to 40 cents for a period of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight weeks of up. And since that point in time, it's failed to break above the 40-cent range, considering when you really look back at history, the 40-cent range seems to be a pretty good range of resistance, right? We had a previous range high in March of 2021 and yet again in October of 2021 where it failed to break down. So this is our very long-term range of support right here at 4 cents, our very long-term range of resistance up here at 40 cents. And since that point in time, we've already made a lot of that move. So the real question is, could we break right back down to that 11 to 12 cent range? Well, I think all things are very much possible in markets. And so it's one thing to say, oh, it'll never happen, when in reality, it just looks relatively weak to the rest of the market. As I showed you earlier with Bitcoin, on Bitcoin, we're actually holding a rectangle or a range. But on something like HBAR, the market has consistently been selling off, while something like XRP has been rallying from this week on February 3rd and February 4th, like it did right here. And I'll just kind of paint it out. It kind of ranged right back up, and it's somewhere in this range right here. HBAR is consistently sold off, and it's probably going to make that range low again, back at 17 cents. And that's because money's just not flowing into it. Matter of fact, it looks weaker, and I'll go ahead and remove those drawings, than even, for example, XLM. So if I zoom in right here, let's say to an hourly time frame, okay, we have a quote unquote support right here at the 25-cent range. I'll go ahead and put that line up right there. You can see that consistently we touched this range and broke to the upside. I'll try to get as many points as possible with a few bear traps. And now, since this point in time, we've sold off and are being resisted at the 25-cent range. So even from these local highs, if I were to pull up the chart of XLM, for example, and let me go ahead and put it on a percentage scale, you can see that XLM, and I'll really try to zoom in, although they trade very similarly, okay, XLM is actually seeing more support and is only down 31% in the same time frame since January 17th. In other words, for an entire month, okay, things are really not looking that good for a lot of these alts, versus HBAR's 45% down right here, as you can see. So whenever I see something like this tells me which one's the leader, which one's a better hold, which ones are more diamond hands behind, where's the majority of the money. And sometimes it also helps to look at the market cap. And as you can see, the market cap on HBAR is indicative of more institutional investors behind Stellar or XLM. And we're talking to the tune of about 1.2 to 1.3 billion dollars. That's a lot of money, folks. I just want you to understand that sometimes the reason that these aren't 150 billion like XRP is because they're in a less of a position to win, and the insiders already know it. So a lot of this money could totally be retail investors or people like me and you. Now here is what's crazy. If I were to pull up the same chart of XRP, you can see that in the same time frame, notice how they all trade very similarly. So it would be foolish for anyone to assume that in a bear bear market, that everything is not going to dump. You can see just how highly correlated they are in terms of how they perform. But at the end of the day, we're looking for strength or relative performance even in a bear. Where is the majority of demand, or where's the majority of money? And as you can see here from this local high back last month, XRP is only down 19.5% relative to 31%, relative to 41%. So again, this is indicative, and notice how this pumped way harder right here than something like HBAR, indicative of the fact that more people are wanting to buy and hold XRP, which is this blue line, relative to XLM, relative to HBAR. And this price action right here does not look good for HBAR. A break below 21 cents is probably going to take us back down to 17 cents. And so from a weekly time frame, that 17-cent range is right back up here. And it's really interesting how in an illiquid market, right, the price on a buy can pump really hard right up to here, and it can also dump really hard. So yes, this looks to be a next support for something like HBAR. And when you go all the way through history, you can see that it acted as a support back in the bull run of 2021. So I think we could easily dump right back down to 17.8. So make your own decisions. If you're already in a loss on something like this, maybe you just want to wait for this dump and then buy more here. But at the end of the day, if I had extra cash or capital to dump into the market, I'd be buying strength. I'd probably be buying more XRP. And finally, folks, for those of you guys who are Trump holders, listen, I'm a huge fan of the man. However, the token has not performed too well since its very first launch back on January 13th of 2025, or it could have been a different day. That's just the weekly. So let's look, January 19th of 2025. And the price pumped to its all-time high of $77. And we can zoom in because this is such a short chart because it was recently launched. But since that high, it's failed to make any new highs, and it's consistently just sold off. It's a pretty liquid market, but I'm going to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't buy something like this just yet. Whenever you see pumps like this and a sell-off like this, even if it's a sharp bottom, typically leads me to believe that we're actually going to make some new lows. I think this thing could easily hit $10 on another breakdown below 14 to 15 bucks right here. So I'm not going to be buying this thing yet. I'd like to see it round off and bottom for quite some time. I'd like for the entire market to rally and make some new moves for highs. And then in a market environment where Trump starts to look pretty healthy and good, I would like to see it break above this range of $25 before I even touch it. And so a lot of folks, although this might be like exciting, right, are trying to catch bottoms. But when you see something trending like this, just because it's down, and we'll go ahead and look at that from its high, 78% from its high does not mean that from present day it can't dump another 78%. Who's to say that Trump token, okay, because there's a lot of people that made a lot of money on this thing, couldn't dump to $3 to $4? I've seen this happen so many times with so many cryptos over the years. I said it couldn't possibly sell any further down. It has to have bottomed. It's so cheap now. All of these completely insane ideas that get people wrecked just because they bought up at, let's say, $40 or $30. And what happens is they look at where they bought in, and because the price is $15 to $17, they think that is cheap. But what right now is cheap might not be cheap for someone else, and people might still be holding on to this thing thinking it has to have bottomed, when the reality is it can continue to sell off, especially in markets where now there are short sellers. Okay. So yes, nobody's in profit right now if they bought this thing, unless they bought it at that low of $14 to $15. Sometimes it's helpful to look at volume. And as you can see, volume did increase right here. So this leads me to believe that on those days we had some level of support, but that doesn't mean that we can't break down further. If we're going to get a new trend, however, and this truly is the bottom, I would like to see a support that is higher than these bottoms right here. So we kind of need to be supported really soon, and then we need to break for a new range high above the $24 to $25 range here in order for me to be confident and sure that we are now trending to the upside. But it's more likely that this thing continues to sell off, and especially when you look at its relative strength, even on an hourly to a 4-hour time frame, you can see we're dropping right back below Bitcoin. So it's slightly more relatively strong for a period of time, but generally speaking, from a daily time frame, from a 4-hour time frame, things do not look good for the Trump token. I'd be looking to buy this thing at some some point, but I think it's better to wait. And even looking at those EMAs, let's go ahead and do that. And let's remove all of these drawings right here. And this will be the final thing. You can see that even from the EMA perspective, we are back below the 10 and 20 EMA and they've crossed over. So generally speaking, things are not looking too great for the Trump token. And I will be waiting to buy this token. So that's it for the video, folks. I know it was a long one full of technical analysis. I hope you got your values worth from the video. And if you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And also, if you want to learn how to think and approach markets the way I do, head on over to bullrunners.com. You're going to see something called Altcoin Pro University. You can watch this 26-minute video so you don't miss out on those bonuses. We have a bunch of paying members, and this is really exciting stuff because not only do we have 100+ expert curated classes, we have live weekly calls where we have experts teaching you everything you need to know to be a pro in crypto and in DeFi. We teach you how to do technical analysis, fundamental analysis, take advantage of DeFi yield. So if you're already holding crypto and you want to put it to work for you and earn on it, you can do that. We give you access to airdrop alerts. One of our people got like $56,000 of airdrops. In other words, this is free money for simply partaking and participating in all sorts of different DeFi ecosystems. And we also share altcoin picks that sometimes 1x, 5x, 20x, 50x, you name it. We've seen it all. And these are altcoin picks that we simply do not share on the channel because we do not have the time to get around to it. And this is stuff that's extra value that we provide only for our members at Altcoin Pro University. So if any or all of that sounds interesting to you and you want to become a pro in crypto, then head on over to bullrunners.com. Check that out. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain before the bonuses run dry. Thanks so much for watching the video. And also, you're going to want to hustle, guys, because here's the reality. This bull run might not last that much longer. It might actually run straight through May and then it hangs out for quite a while through the summer like we typically get. In other words, the old phrase goes, sell in May and look away. And so every single day that you sit on something like this, you could be missing out on an altcoin pick that actually has the potential to change your life. An extra 5 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand invested into the right cryptos that you got for free on an airdrop or whatever, right? Could change your life. And I'm not guaranteeing that any of that's going to happen for you. You have to be involved and pay attention, but the resources, the tools, the training are bar none the best in the game. So that said, check out bullrunners.com. Thanks so much for watching the video. I look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.